Our topic is today connection of methods of foreign language teaching to other sciences. Problems. Relation of methods to pedagogy. Connection of methods with psychology. Relation of methods of foreign language teaching to linguistic. Relation of methods of foreign language teaching to social linguistic. And relation of methods of foreign language teaching to psycholinguistic. First problem, first question. Relation of foreign language method to pedagogy. Methods of foreign language teaching are closely related to other sciences such as pedagogy, psychology, linguistic, and some others. Pedagogy is a science connected with the teaching and education of the young generation. Since method also deals with the problems of teaching and education, it's most closely related to pedagogy. To study foreign language teaching, one must know pedagogy. One branch of pedagogy is called didactic. Didactic studies general ways of teaching in schools. Methods as compared to didactic study the specific way of teaching a definite subject. Thus, it may be considered special didactic. Pedagogy is the science or general theory of the bringing up and teaching of children and the young. In other terms, the science of education in the narrow sense and instruction or education in the wider sense. It consists accordingly of two main divisions, educational pedagogy and instructional pedagogy, of which the latter is called didactic, otherwise method of methods. Now it has become one of the fundamental principles of didactic and is used in teaching all school subjects without exception. Programmed instruction was first applied to teaching mathematics. Now, through didactic, it is used in teaching many subjects, including foreign languages. It is a task of the specialist in methods of teaching foreign languages not only to seek for the best methods of imparting to the pupils knowledge and skills, and of training them in good habits, but also to look out for the best means of education the pupils through the subjects with whose teaching he is concerned. Pedagogy is an applied science. Both divisions of it, in all their parts, in particular foreign language method, are applied psychology. In foreign language teaching, the teacher forms and develops in pupils' pronunciation habits, lexical habits, and other habits. Since habits is the result of the repeated action in the same line, pupils can acquire habits by constant, steady drill. Therefore, the teacher should remember when organizing pupils' learning, the drill should be constant and accurate. This implies correct copy, clearly presented and easy for imitation and reproduction, given under motivating conditions, which favors repetitions, which will lead to skill. Since skill is the ability to do something well, and in language learning skills are pupils' ability to use the target language for communicative needs, the teacher should form and develop such language skills as listening, comprehension, speaking, reading, and writing. Of course, Methods of foreign language teaching connects to psychology. One cannot develop language skills, listening comprehension, speaking, reading, and writing of our pupils effectively if we do not know to take into account the psychology of habits and skills, the ways of forming them, the influence of formerly acquired habits on the formation of new ones, and many other necessary factors that psychology can supply us with. Since bringing up and teaching children are particular models of combined psychological and mental activity, it is clear that psychological principles must largely contribute to the theoretical foundation of pedagogy in general and of methods of teaching in particular. Pedagogy and psychology may be said to overlap each other, or like two interesting cycles, to have a common area, which has the name of educational psychology. This relationship may be represented graphically as follows: pedagogy, educational pedagogy, and psychology. At present, we have much material in the field of psychology which can be applied to teaching a foreign language. For example, Zhinkin, a prominent Soviet psychologist, in his investigation of the mechanism of speech, came to the conclusion that words and rules of combining them are most probably demand in the kinetic center of the brain. When the ear receives a signal, it reaches the brain, its hearing center, and then passes to the kinetic center. Thus, if a teacher wants his pupil to speak English, he must use all the opportunities he has to make them hear or speak it. Furthermore, to master a second language is to acquire another code, another way of receiving and transmitting information. To create this new code in the most effective way, one must take into consideration certain psychological factors. Effective learning of a foreign language depends on a great extent on the pupil's memory. That's why a teacher must know how can help his pupils to memorize successfully and retain in memory the language material they learn. Zinchenko, a Soviet psychologist, came to the conclusion that this memory is retentive. Consequently, in teaching a foreign language, we should create favorable conditions for involuntary memorizing. Experiments done by the prominent scientists show that psychology helps methods to determine the role of the mother tongue in different stages of teaching. The amount of material for pupils to assimilate at every stage of instruction, the sequence and ways in which various habits and skills should be developed, methods and techniques which are more suitable for presenting the material and for ensuring its retention by the pupils, and so on. Psychology allows the methodologist to determine the so-called psychological content of teaching, in what habits and skills should be developed in pupils to acquire language proficiently. Psychology also helps methods in selecting techniques for teaching and learning, in how to teach in a most effective way, for example, under what conditions pupils can learn words, phrases, sentence patterns more effectively, or how to ensure pupils memorizing new words in an easier way. Since progress in learning is made by the addition of new knowledge, may be imparted in teaching a certain groups of pupils, what psychological factors should be taken into consideration when imparting a new knowledge to pupils? Methods of foreign language teaching relates to linguistic. While linguistic is a science, language as a subject of instruction is not a science, but not an activity. Methods of foreign language teaching is most closely related to linguistic, deals with the problems which are of paramount importance to methods, which language and thinking, grammar and vocabulary, the relationship between grammar and vocabulary, and many others. Methods successfully use, for example, the results of linguistic investigation in the selection and arrangement of language material for teaching. There can no doubt that all the branches of linguistic, phonetic, the two divisions of grammar, morphology and syntax, and the two lexicology and semantic can furnish useful data to foreign language method. Many prominent linguists have not only developed the theory of linguistics, but also tried to apply it to language teaching. The following quotation may serve as a proof of this. It has occurred to the linguistic as well as to the psychologist that the foreign language classroom should be an excellent laboratory in which to test new theories of language acquisition. Methods of foreign language teaching, like any other science, have definite ways of investigating the problems which may arise. They are a critical study of the ways foreign languages were taught in our country and abroad, a thorough study and summing up of the experience of the best foreign language teachers in different types of school, experimenting with the aim of confirming or refuting the working hypotheses that may arise during investigation. Experimenting becomes more and more popular with methodologists. In experimenting, methodologists have to deal with different data. That's why in arranging research work, they use mathematics, statistics, and probability theory to interpret experimental results. Relation of methods of foreign language teaching to psycholinguistic. Psycholinguistic is integrated science that uses methods of linguistic, sociology, and ethnography to explore the social nature of language and its social functions. Social linguistics is a descriptive study of the effect of any and all aspects of society, including cultural norms, expectations, and contexts, on the way language is used and the effects of language use on society. Social linguistics focuses on the society's effect on language. It also studies how language varieties differ between groups separated by certain social variables, ethnicity, religion, status, gender, level of education, age, etc., and how creation and adherence to these rules is used to categorize individuals in social or social economic classes. Language is central to social interaction in every society, regardless of location and time period. Language and social interaction have a reciprocal relationship. Language shapes social interactions, and social interactions shape language. Social linguistics is the study of the connection between language and society and the way people use language in different social situations. It asks the question, how does language affect the social nature of human beings, and how does social interaction shape language? It ranges greatly in depth and details, from the study of dialects across a given region to the analysis of the way men and women speak to each other in certain situations. The basic premise of social linguistics is that language is variable and ever-changing. As a result, language is not uniform or constant. Rather, it is varied and inconsistent for both the individual user and within and among groups of speakers who use the same language. People adjust the way they talk to their social situations. An individual, for instance, will speak differently to a child than he or she will to their colleague professor. This social situational variation is sometimes called register and depends not only on the occasion and relationship between the participants, but also on the participants' region, ethnicity, socio-economic status, age, and gender. Social linguistics also commonly study dialect, which is the regional, social, or ethnic variation of a language. For example, the primary language in the United States is English. People who live in the South, however, often vary in the way they speak and the words they use compared to people who live in the Northwest. Even though it is all the same language, English. There are different dialects of English depending on what region of the country you are in. Relation of methods of foreign language teaching to psycholinguistic. Psycholinguistic, or psychology of language, is the study of the psychological and neurobiological factors that enable humans to acquire, use, comprehend, and produce language. Initial forays into psycholinguistics were largely philosophical or educational schools of thought, due mainly to their location in departments other than applied sciences. For example, cohesive data on how the human brain functioned. Modern research makes use of biology, neuroscience, cognitive science, linguistics, and information science to study how the brain processes language, and less so the known processes of social science, human development, communication theories, and infant development, among others. Psycholinguistics covers the cognitive processes that make it possible to generate a grammatical and meaningful sentence out of vocabulary and grammatical structures, as well as the processes that make it possible to understand utterances, words, text, etc. Developmental Psycholinguistic studies infants and children's ability to learn language, usually with experimental or at least quantitative methods, as opposite to naturalistic observation, such as those made by John Peugeot in this research on the development of children. Psycholinguistic is interdisciplinary in nature and is studied by people in a variety of fields such as psychology, cognitive science, and linguistics. There are several subdivisions within psychology linguistics that are based on the components that make up human language.